Hello everyone, welcome to Deep Dive Sports Corner. I am the guy who on MLW Discord is more known by the goofy name Nick Sailor does exist. Today I'm going to take a deep dive into Brendan Jorgensen's struggles as a hitter. So I will first start by giving a quick overview of Jorgensen as a hitter and break down his struggles from 2020 to 2021 on the surface. Then to figure out why exactly Brendan Jorgensen struggles so much, I'm going to dive into his at-bats and talk about a recurring theme that I found about him as a hitter. I'm going to end by looking at his 2020 playoff games, which also confirm what I know about him as a hitter from this deep dive. So, Brendan Jorgensen needs no introduction. He was the #1 overall pick in the 2020 MLW draft. This is his third season in the MLW. He plays for the Great Lakes Skaters, who had really struggled with a 1-5 start to the season. Brendan Jorgensen in 2020 was okay as a hitter. He batted .265 with a .379 on base percentage and a .706 OPS. The .706 OPS that he batted was slightly below league average of .790, while his average of .265 was notably a lot higher than the .200 batting average as a league. So in 2020, Brendan Jorgensen was sort of a slightly below average hitter as when you look at his all-around hitting, which was fine because one, it was his first season in the league, and two, he was drafted as a pitcher. Then it comes the 2020 playoffs, where Brendan Jorgensen raised his game actually. He batted .265 again, but his OPS went from a .706 to an .873, which is above the league average OPS in 2020. And this was particularly notable because in the playoffs, you would expect that all teams would be sending out their ace pitchers to face Brendan Jorgensen. In other words, Brendan Jorgensen actually did really well in the playoffs against the aces across MLW, which is really encouraging because if Brendan Jorgensen can really develop as a hitter based on what people saw in the 2020 playoffs, Brendan Jorgensen can turn into an all-around very strong MLW player, perhaps an MVP candidate. However, things took a downturn in 2021. His batting average dropped all the way down to 172. His OPS didn't change quite much. It went from a .706 the previous season to .692, but nowhere close to his 2020 playoff numbers, and he was nowhere near the 2021 league average in terms of hitting. In 2021, the league average OPS went from a .790 to .941, which signals the league as a whole was doing a much better hitting-wise. But Brendan Jorgensen's hitting stats stayed flat, which was really alarming because in 2020 he wasn't exactly above average in the first place. And in fact, his .692 OPS in 2021 was so bad compared to the rest of the league that of the 21 hitters in the league with at least 45 at-bats, he was second last among those. The only person he beat out was Caden Irwin, the 2021 #2 overall pick who really struggled to adjust to the MLW scene as a rookie. However, things are actually even worse than that. In 2021, MLW implemented a mandatory second pitcher rule. In short, what it means for hitters across the league is that you are not going to face every team's ace anymore. Teams, maybe without a second pitcher, they are forced to send out someone who their only goal is to try and hit a plate. We look at the Metro Magic, they're a prime example. Throughout most of the season, before they traded for Trevor Bonham, they were trying to get Liam Jackson going, and Liam Jackson was completely struggling to hit a plate. At one point, him and Jack Agner combined to contribute to Ryan Kelly's 15 walks in a row in one of the series. And that just tells you that in 2021, some hitters actually had the benefit of facing off against pitchers who are really not ready to pitch in MLW, and Brendan Jorgensen was actually one of them. So when you consider that into his stats, it gets worse. To really see how problematic this is, I singled out a group of pitchers in MLW that I called the group of good pitchers. What this means is that the group good pitchers, they have to pitch at least 9 innings in the season, so whether it is 2020 or 2021, and also they have to have an ERA of below 350. To explain how I actually chose the number 350, in 2020, all the pitchers with at least 9 innings have an ERA above that. In fact, all have an ERA below that. The highest ERA of all the pitchers with at least 9 innings that year was Nick Saylor with a 3.21 ERA. So that means that MLW pitchers who managers can actually trust have an ERA at worst at 3.50. So that's how I divided it. Once you take that into account, of the pitchers that MLW manager will likely be able to trust, in 2020, Brendan Jorgensen batted 227 with a 561 OPS against those pitchers, which was worse than his overall average, which was kind of expected because when you play against good pitchers, you're not going to bat as well. Sounds explanatory. In 2021, however, things got a lot worse. He batted 135 against those pitchers with the 256 on base percentage. The on-base percentage was actually really problematic because Ben Jorgensen's on-base percentage in 2021 as a whole was 411. And this kind of suggests that he was really able to take advantage of pitchers who just flat out cannot find a plate and use that to inflate his stats. And in fact, when we compare to the rest of the league, this was very true. In 2020, batters across the league batted 171, 380 on base percentage against those group of good pitchers. And Brendan Jorgensen sort of batted similar to that, not too far off. But in 2021, batters batted 215 and a 383 on base percentage against those group pitchers, and Brendan Jorgensen was nowhere close to that. So Brendan Jorgensen not only regressed from 2020 to 2021, he regressed bad to a point where he might actually be completely unusable because a 418 OPS was 300 points below his OPS for the 2021 season, which was already pretty darn bad when compared to the rest of the league. So now the question is, why did he regress this much? One thing I remembered, and this is why I went into this study, I thought this could serve as a clue, is that I remember Jorgensen swung at a lot of pitches at the inside part of a plate and off the strike zone. It turns out to not be true, but that intuition helped me want to see that maybe pitchers have adjusted their pitching strategies around Brendan Jorgensen in 2021 that led to Brendan Jorgensen completely struggling in 2021 compared to 2020. So with that, I decided to, for Brendan Jorgensen's game across 2020 and 2021 against what I call the good pitchers. So reminder, good pitchers means 9 innings pitched on a year below 350 ERA. So for those games, I divided into by different series. And for each series, I recorded the pitch location with relation to the strike zone, and I created this grid. Basically, the grid is basically everything that a pitch could land, with the middle part here being the strike zone. So in other words, I will record all the pitches, payoff pitches that landed in the strike zone here. And I will record all of the other payoff pitches according to where they landed. And with those pitches that landed at specific spots, I will also record the bad results. For instance, it explains a lot properly. In 2021, Brendan Jorgensen had a series whose recorded results look something like this. And to break down what the results look like, in this particular series, there were 3 payoff pitches that landed in the middle of a strike zone. And those 3 pitches, the at-bat results was strikeout, strikeout, and fly out to right field. And for instance, there were 2 more pitches that landed above the strike zone. And the 2 pitches ended up giving a walk and a strikeout to Brendan Jorgensen, etc. So I recorded for all the series where Brendan Jorgensen faced off against the good pitcher that I made. Once I recorded those at-bats, something really jumped out to me. Brendan Jorgensen, throughout the 2 years, had 3 series where the pitchers were throwing all of the pitches into the strike zone. Specifically, in those 3 series, more than 75% of the playoff pitches were gonna land in a strike zone or landed in a strike zone. And in all the other series, the amount of those pitches that landed or should land in a strike zone was less than 60%, and in some cases actually a lot less than that. And Brendan Jorgensen's hitting numbers across those 2 types of series really differed. In those 3 series where the pitchers were throwing a lot of pitches into the strike zone, he batted 235 with a 572 OPS, which is not great, but the 572 OPS was actually above his overall hitting numbers against good pitchers in 2020 and 2021. And also, the strike rate of the payoff pitches, the chances of him getting struck out on payoff pitches that land or should land in the zone was a 46%, which was slightly above his 2020 strikeout rate of 43% and his 2021 strikeout rate at 37%. So overall, meh, but not terrible. But in all the other series, where essentially pitchers start to expand the strike zone on him when it's time for payoff pitches, he was terrible. He batted a 100 average with a 237 on base percentage and a 337 OPS. And I did check with the MLW website, that is 2020 Brendan Jorgensen numbers. In short, he was so bad that Brendan Jorgensen should just take him out of the lineup if he started noticing that pitchers are really expanding strike zones on him on payoff pitches. And even worse than that, even when in those situations pitchers land or should land in a strike zone, Brendan Jorgensen cannot do anything with it. In those games, almost 70% of the pitches that is about to land or landed in a strike zone, Brendan Jorgensen struck out in 70% of them. That is terrible. He was swinging and missing literally anything and everything in those situations. And it was across the two seasons as well. It was not exclusive to 2020 or 2021. He was just straight up bad when pitchers started to expand the zone on him. So with that, my conclusion is that Brendan Jorgensen didn't actually regress as a hitter. It's a myth. He is just clueless whenever pitchers started spraying pitches all over the strike zone instead of trying to land everything. And it just happens that in 2020, 2 of the 4 series that he played in, the pitchers were sending everything into a strike zone. And in 2021, only 1 of those 4 series did he see pitchers send everything into a strike zone. That's what the difference between 2020 and 2021 is. Brendan Jorgensen was the same exact hitter across the 2 seasons. And this can be further explained actually by the Gators 2020 run, which is ironic because you're not supposed to be able to pick out his weakness in a playoff series where he absolutely shined, but it was the case. Let's start with the 2020 NLDS. This was a series where he was spectacular against Jimmy Norb and the Downtown Diamondbacks. He had 4 singles and a home run in a span of just 9 at-bats and batted a 2.111 OPS. And to give anyone without an idea of how spectacular a 2 OPS is, his OPS during this 2020 regular season was a 706. In other words, his OPS was 3 times higher than that. Spectacular! Even Kyle Schultz or a 2021 Jimmy Norm cannot get those numbers when you go across the entire season. The key to that? Well, Jimmy was sending literally almost every single payoff pitch into a strike zone. Of this 9 payoff pitches that he saw, 7 of those is going to land or landed in the strike zone. And Brendan Jorgensen has 5 hits, including a home run, against those pitches. And that, my friends, is where the 2 OPS came from. Let's go to the NLCS. This time, different opponents, Eastern Eagles and Daniel Schultz as a pitcher. And this series, let me tell you, I was laughing, like literally dying when I was recording this game. Because at one point, every single one of Daniel's payoff pitches that is going to land or land in a strike zone, Brendan Jorgensen hit it really well. Like his first 4 at-bats against payoff pitches that should land or land in a strike zone was a deep fly ball to left, a single, and a home run. And while that is going on every single other payoff pitch that was outside of the strike zone, he got out. And multiple of those instances, Daniel looked silly, just swinging and missing. And even with that home run, Brendan Jorgensen only batted 616 OPS on the entire series, which kind of shows you where the problem is. Is that even, like, Coming off a series where he literally hit everything, Daniel managed to significantly cool down Brendan Jorgensen by just expanding that strike zone and get him to swing on payoff pitches, and it absolutely worked out. And let's go to the 2020 World Series, and this one also tells us a very similar story. Again, he wasn't too bad in the NLCS. Now he faces Kyle Schultz in the World Series against the Western Wildcats. This series, Kyle kind of struggled to find control. He gave Brendan Jorgensen 7 walks in a span of 19 plate appearances during the series. I don't know why. Maybe Kyle just lost control. Maybe Kyle was pitching too carefully. Either way, Brendan Jorgensen walked a lot. But when he didn't walk, he was quite spectacularly terrible. If you look at the strike zone here, Kyle landed a total of 6 of 19 payoff pitches inside the strike zone. Brendan Jorgensen was 1 of 6 against those pitchers with 3 strikeouts. So in other words, even though coming against 2 series, when he actually had kind of decent, had 2 home runs in 2 series, Kyle managed to cool Brendan Jorgensen down as a hitter, even though it was kind of at the expense of a lot of walks. And how did he do it? He expanded the strike zone. And that managed to cool Brendan Jorgensen perhaps all the way down through until right now. So that really tells everyone who Brendan Jorgensen is as a hitter. Is that if you just concentrate all the payoff pitches into the strike zone, he's gonna hit it, right? He's decent at that. And he's one of the fastest guys in the league. So even if he hits ground balls in play, he's probably gonna get a base. But when you start expand the strike zone a bit, he is so bad that he probably should be put on the bench because he's clueless whether the pitch is landed outside or inside the strike zone. That's it about Brendan Jorgensen. He didn't regress from 2020 to 2021. He's the same hitter that entered the league compared to right now. He was the same across the 2 years. He is really good when just paint the strike zone. Terrible otherwise. That's it. So with that is my breakdown of Brendan Jorgensen as a hitter. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed researching and talking about this. We'll see you next time whenever I decide to make a video, or also known as whenever I found another problem that I think I can solve. Peace.